Academy Awards were bestowed upon her. Everyone was enchanted by her. However, Julie Andrews concealed a dark truth for 60 years behind her flawless smile. In 1965, the start of the terrible incident occurred on a film shoot. She had a husband. His spouse was already taken. Their connection was electric. The studio executives vowed to ruin them if word got out about their clandestine hotel chats. Silence was Julie's choice, up until this point. Famed soprano from The Sound of Music opens all about her disastrous forbidden love affair. In the little English hamlet of Walton-on-Thames, Julie Andrews came into our world in 1935. Her life was complicated from the time she was a baby. Julie was born from an affair between her mother Barbara and a close relative. For a long time, Julie thought her biological father was someone else. Age 15 was the year she learned the truth, until she revealed it in her autobiography, which she wrote decades later. No one knew the truth. Her home life collapsed once the Second World War broke out. Her parents went their separate ways and then remarried. From time to time, Julie lived with her mother and her new stepfather, Ted Andrews. Other times, she lived with her biological father. Raising a family with her stepfather was no picnic. Worse, he crossed serious boundaries and drank excessively. Julie felt compelled to secure her bedroom door with a lock, to keep herself safe. They were destitute and lived in a rundown area of London. Those years of the war were, she would later say, among her lowest points. Her voice, nonetheless, shone through all that chaos. Despite his issues, her stepfather saw her talent and set her up with singing classes. Then she crossed paths with the renowned voice instructor, Madame Lillian Stiles Allen. She was like a third mother to Julie. Julie has a rare quality that Madame noticed, an extraordinary vocal range and a remarkably clean tone. In Julie's mind, her voice was just another ordinary instrument. Though others were astounded, she quipped that her highest notes could only be heard by dogs. She studied diligently, taking music lessons on top of her academic responsibilities, and was ready for a future that few of her peers could fathom. Julie's parents were the audience for her very first performances. Standing on a beer crate, she reached for the microphone at the tender age of 10, accompanied by her stepfather and mother on piano. As time went on, she began performing for troops, taking trains, and even sharing sleeping quarters with fellow child star Petula Clark. By the time I was 12 years old, everything had changed. A guy who oversaw some of London's most prominent theaters was introduced to her by her stepfather. Julie took the shot he offered her. She made her professional operatic debut at the London Hippodrome, where she sung a challenging French opera before a sold-out audience. Her performance, even though she was just a child, stole the show. Everyone in the crowd lost it. A year's worth of work came out of that one night. She would even surprise the crowd by running on stage and telling balloon artist Wally Boyd she could sing as part of a performance they did together. She made history at the Royal Variety Show when she sang solo for the first time in front of the monarch and queen at the tender age of 13. After that, progress was rapid. Became a TV and radio personality, rising to prominence in the United Kingdom. Cinderella and Jack and the Beanstalk were among the children's plays in which she appeared. She developed her own fan base by the time she was a teenager. Not many people saw Julie's debut feature. An Italian animated film called The Singing Princess included her voice. However, it was the beginning of a far larger journey for her. The first time Julie Andrews stepped foot on a Broadway stage, she was just 19 years old. September 30th was the date. In 1954, she made it big in a musical called The Boyfriend, playing the character of Holly Brown. It was more than a debut. It was a turning point in one's life. British actress Patty Jacques had recommended her for the role, and Julie was eternally grateful to her for giving her her big break. But accepting the position wasn't a picnic. Julie was frightened to leave her loved ones in England. She was already flying halfway across the globe to provide for them financially. She went with her father's encouragement, even though she didn't know if she would succeed. Every aspect would be altered by that singular decision. The audience loved her. Everyone gushed over her. Her impeccable comic timing and strong, clear voice astounded audiences. Actress Julie got a Theatre World Award for her debut performance in the 485 performance run of the production. The ovation was nice, but the real prize was the audience. Among those in attendance were prominent Broadway producers, Frederick Loewe and Alan J. Lerner. They had recently discovered their Eliza Doolittle during the casting process for their next production of My Fair Lady. Julie had been a long-term member by March 1956, at the age of 20. She shone brightly. Acting beside Rex Harrison as Eliza Doolittle in My Fair Lady was an enormous deal. Julie got to showcase her acting chops and vocal range as she went from Cockney flower girl to refined lady. Plus, folks took note. It was an enormous success. For a long time, it was a Broadway staple, and the cast album was ubiquitous. In homes, on radios, and even in the charts. In 1958, after sweeping New York, she performed on the West End of London. She had a talent that transcended continents and a voice that could reach 4 octaves. After that, she made a triumphant return to Broadway in 1960, at least in the role of Guinevere, Queen of Camelot. She co-starred with the charismatic Welsh actor Richard Burton. A little complexity ensued off stage. It was later that Julie acknowledged she felt very attracted to Burton. He had an irresistible charisma that drew her in. He maintained an air of professionalism for a period. However, Julie astonished everyone, including herself, by retaliating with a swear word when he eventually took action. As she subsequently quipped, Mary Poppins let her hair down, confronting him and ending the conversation. Their stage presence, however, remained unchanged. To the contrary, it sizzled much more. A performance that aired on The Ed Sullivan Show helped turn around the show's fortunes after they had first faltered. People came to see the play, and it was a smashing success for 3 years. It was Burton who took home the Bronze Tony. Walt Disney was keeping tabs on Julie as she received yet another nomination. The moment Disney laid eyes on her in Camelot, he knew she was the one to play Mary Poppins. But something terrible happened to Julie beforehand, interrupting that. It was widely believed that she would play the lead role in the upcoming Hollywood adaptation of My Fair Lady. She was immensely famous for the role. Warner Brothers wanted a greater name, so they turned her down, even though she was Eliza Doolittle. Audrey Hepburn got the part. It was devastating. A huge movie star in her own right, Audrey couldn't hold a candle to Julie when it came to singing. It was actually necessary to have a different singer dub most of her tracks. Julie went on to say that she would have spit in their face if they had asked her to sing for another person's voice. Still, I was able to land a better role after losing that one. She was offered Mary Poppins by Disney. That night, he hurried backstage to meet her after seeing her perform at Camelot. Julie believed he was merely trying to be courteous. She proceeded to inform him that she was unable to accept any additional parts. A baby was on the way. "Thanks," Walt grinned and responded. "Stay put." This wasn't an act of politeness. He had envisioned this undertaking for many years. He assured his daughters that he would adapt their beloved novel into a movie. Plus, he thought Julie was the sole candidate capable of pulling it off. Further, he arranged for her family to remain in a property that was rented in Los Angeles. No one anticipated the little English girl from a tiny hamlet to become a global phenomenon when Mary Poppins aired in 1964. At the age of 29, she made her cinematic acting debut. Fans couldn't get enough of her portrayal of the enchanted man the minute she stepped onto the screen. Something went wrong with the film, More than $103 million was its global total, with over $44 million coming from the U.S. alone. Both films competed for the Academy Award the following year. It was smashed by Mary Poppins. Best Actress went to Julie Andrews. Not even Audrey Hepburn received a nomination. Julie honored Jack Warner, the guy who made this possible, in her address. The CEO who turned her down received a playful nod. Plus, despite having significantly lower production costs, Mary Poppins was more profitable than My Fair Lady. Julie Andrews' true identity had been revealed to Hollywood. The Sound of Music didn't only become popular when it debuted in theaters in March 1965. It erupted. It catapulted Julie Andrews to superstardom and earned $286 million around the world. She brought joy to the home of a bereaved family as the energetic young nun, Maria von Trapp. One of the most iconic moments in cinematic history is the opening shot, which features her whirling on the summit. However, behind the scenes, it wasn't magical. She was repeatedly knocked to the ground by the wind from the blades as the helicopter recorded the shot. She made a joke about being squashed into the ground after each take. Andrews became Hollywood's Golden Girl after the film won 5 Oscars, including Best Picture. Being flawless, nevertheless, was not cheap. People were starting to believe she was limited to musicals after her 2 consecutive beloved nanny roles. It was clear to Julie that she needed to do something different. The Americanization of Emily, a picture she chose later in 1964, was thus entirely of a different kind. The tone was far darker, and it took place during World War II. Opposite James Garner, she portrayed a British widow. She had stopped singing for the very first occasion. It was all an act. That she was capable of accomplishing it. The 1966 Cold War spy thriller Torn Curtain, in which she collaborated with Alfred Hitchcock, was her next feature. The star power of her and Paul Newman was something that Universal Pictures was banking on. However, Hitchcock was dissatisfied. He desired a more gritty tone, and he thought both actors were too polished for it. Audiences came out regardless of the mixed reviews. A budget of just $3 million yielded almost $13 million for the film. A victory, however uncertain. She also tackled the historical drama Hawaii that year, which was based on the novel by James Michener. At $15 million, it was the most expensive film ever made. Even though it was delayed due to tidal wave warnings and heavy rain, the picture nonetheless managed to become the biggest grossing film of the year. Performed the role of a determined woman who accompanies her husband on his expedition to the islands. Even though she gave a good performance, Jocelyn Lagarde ended up getting all the attention. Not only did she win a Golden Globe, but she was the showstopper. No one had anticipated such a shock. Towards the decade's close, the enchantment began to wear off. Julie had a big role in the 1968 biopic Star, which was about the life of theater actress Gertrude Lawrence. Huge sums were allotted. It seemed like the director and the man responsible for the score were one and the same, so things were looking good. Sadly, the movie was a bust. Her critics said she was over the top. Overdone hoydonishness was the description that Variety used to describe her performance. Due to its massive box office bomb, the picture went down in history as one of the decade's most costly flops. Her husband, Blake Edwards, directed the 1970 film Darling Lily. Rebranding her image was the goal. She swore on camera. She teased in a strip show. Not in a positive manner, the audiences were stunned. Although it spent a hefty $25 million making the film, it bombed at the box office. Once again, it was a huge failure. Suddenly, she was no longer considered a leading lady in Hollywood. For some reason, she managed to get nominations for Star and Darling Lily at the Golden Globes. The admiration was there, but forward motion was lacking. Something had to give. A variety show featuring music, humor, and special guests, the Julie Andrews Hour, debuted in 1972 on television. ABC was so confident in her that they gave her a 5-year contract. Critics were very complimentary of the show's debut. Her charisma and adaptability were lauded by critics, but that didn't translate to high ratings. The show was discontinued after only 1 season due to its struggles in competing with stronger shows. Then, an odd thing occurred. The show took home several Emmys just 1 month after being canceled. Nominated for 10, 7 have been presented. An award-winning show that went unwatched was heartbreaking. It was evident that television wasn't her new home, even if ABC offered her additional programs to compensate. Thus, she took a daring step. The nightclub circuit was her playground. Yes, the same woman who had made her name singing with Alpine children now performed jazz and jokes in seedy clubs. It was completely new. She joked about Hollywood and made fun of her own looks, proven that she wasn't merely a musical theater nanny. Plenty of critics praised it. The crowds went wild. The world got to see a different side of her, perceptive, entertaining, and well under control. Her return to the big screen didn't happen until 1979. 10, Blake Edwards' romantic comedy, featured her. It was utterly contemporary, hilarious, and hot. The film's $74 million box office haul proved that Julie Andrews was still a star. In 1981, she released S.O.B., a dark comedy in which she shocked audiences by going shirtless. There was purpose to that instant. She was claiming a new identity and destroying her old one at the same time. However, 1982 was the true turning point with Victoria. In the film, she portrayed a female singer who is trying to get into the nightclub industry by passing herself off as a man. It was a bold, multi-layered, and cunning role. Her performance was flawless, touching on themes of gender, sexuality, and the will to survive. She received an Oscar nomination, a Golden Globe, and $28 million from the picture. Suddenly, when people heard her name, they weren't just picturing Maria von Trapp. What Julie Andrews had accomplished was quite rare for celebrities.